Hello, humane marketers. Sarah Znakrocha here. Welcome to another episode of the Humane Marketing Podcast, a place to be for the generation of marketers who cares. This is the show where we talk about marketing your business in a way that feels good to you, is aligned with your values, and also resonates more with your conscious customers because it's not pushy, ethical, and also beautiful. So if you're a regular here, you know that I'm organizing the conversations around the 7 Ps of humane marketing. And if you're new here and this is your first time, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. You may want to download your one-page marketing plan with the 7 Ps of humane marketing in the form of a mandala at humane.marketing/one page, the number one and page. So again, humane.marketing/one page. And with that, with no further ado, let's dive into today's conversation. Hi, George. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. This is thank you for inviting me. Always a joy to talk with you because we share these deep values, and I think we'll have a great conversation today.
Yes. It's kind of I highlighted it as a bit of a controversial conversation, right?
Uh-huh.
Because
Yeah.
there's different opinions about it. And I think anything related to pricing is
Oh,
always, has
it's
different opinions.
it's tough
And
for people. Yeah.
yeah, it's one of the most listened to episodes, I would say. Whenever I position it under the P of pricing, you've
Yes.
a whole bunch of listeners. So that's
Yeah.
that's great. And I'm so grateful for your point of view and your perspective. So let's kind of go there because I reached out to you again. We've talked previously, but I've reached out to you again because you just posted something on LinkedIn about pricing, and the exact title was "Change More Money to Get More Motivated Clients?"
Yeah, charge
Question
more
mark.
money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we charge more money?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to unpack, and I have some questions, and I think overall we agree, but then there's also certain points
Yeah.
where I'm like, what if we look at it this way? So
Sure.
let's
Of
just
course. Yeah,
have this
I'm here to
this
learn too.
conversation. Yeah. But maybe first it'd be interesting for listeners to kind of hear your story with pricing and when
Sure.
you started out. Was it always
Yeah.
clear how you price your things, or
Yeah.
how has it evolved over time?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I think my history is instructional because I've kind of run the gamut of the pricing in my industry. I started in 2009 with my, coaching business, coaching and training business. And back then I knew relatively little about online marketing. So I was learning from the big boys, usually mostly boys back then, the big players who it's so interesting. They were always, they all charge the same price, which is $2,000 or 1997 or 1995, they all back in 2009, 2010, they were all charging the same price. 2008 was when I started buying courses. So they all charge $2,000, which today is even more money, but
No matter the
$2,000.
length, like, or how long were these programs?
I have some of them on my shelf right now, and it's not that big. It's just it's shocking to me, genuinely. I mean, so the way they they call it stack the value, or it's like you go to the sales page. It's like you get you get this course typically valued at $500. This course typically valued at 3,000. This course
Mhm.
typically valued at 1,500 or whatever, and all bundled up. Instead of paying $100,000 or something ridiculous like that, you're only paying 2,000. It's like you're getting a 98% discount, or it's something they did that kind of manipulation, which of course, at the end of the day, they're sending you a bunch of PDFs. They're sending you some PDFs for $2,000. They might send you something in the mail physically, and like a binder and with some papers. And I'm like, I have them on my shelf, and as I look at them, I'm like, this is stuff that a lot of stuff some of the stuff you can Google, but some of the stuff, sure, they have like sample emails, they print it out. And I look at the emails, I'm like, I wouldn't send this kind of email because this is manipulative. And anyway, long story short, those were the people that, because when I was learning online marketing, those were the loudest people,
You're right.
and so $2,000 per course, and with almost no interaction with them live. I think they had some like larger group calls that lasted for like 3 months or something like that. But I go on there and actually didn't really know what to ask in the early days, and just kind of listen, and it's like it's hard to get their attention anyway. So I thought, okay, well, that's the industry standard price, so that's what I went with. I
Yeah.
charged $2,000. Now, I thought I was pretty generous because for $2,000, I was giving a whole year of Q&As with me,
Mm.
and it's like a whole year of weekly Q&As. And eventually I went to twice weekly Q&A for a whole year back in the 2009, 2010, 2011 days. And, I was teaching everything. I taught them everything for $2,000. And it's like, so that's what I started charging for a course. And I think for like standalone courses, I was charging like $700 or something like that back in 2009, 2010. Standalone meaning, okay, you take this particular topic like social media marketing or something like that, and you get, 3 months of Q&A or something like that. So funny thing is these days, my standalone, as of this recording, they could change. As of this recording, my standalone courses are 150 and
Mhm.
2022 prices.
Mhm.
Compared to 2009 prices, my absolute numbers my absolute pricing has gone down. Now, gratefully, my income has been good, very good recently. But the it's like if you looked at inflation, I should be charging 1,000 to 5,000 easily for my courses now. But
Mhm.
I've brought it down to a very humane, I think, or accessible level of 150, and they get 2 months of Q&A, and it's a very I think my content is even better than it was back then because of all the experience I've had. So, like I said, the experiences I've had. So the reason why I stopped charging those high prices is because I noticed, and maybe you have to, I don't know, Sarah and everyone listening, I charge these prices and people buy into them, and not everybody uses the program.
Mhm. Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of people don't use the program to the extent that I want them to. Sure, maybe like most of them will like at least get started, but then it's easy for them to get, oh, shiny new object. Oh, here's another $2,000 course. Well, here's another $1,000 course. Oh, here's another five, whatever the pricing is. Oh, here's another thing that looks really good. Sign up. And so I started noticing this dynamic. Okay, there's this dynamic happening within myself and within the student. I noticed, okay, first within the student, I started to recognize, and actually this was one of my students told me this. I'm so grateful that he did. He said, George, I started noticing something after a while. When I spend money to buy a course, I sign up for a course, my brain tricks me to think that I've gotten something done. I've made some progress.
Mhm.
And that there's kind of a letdown, or that not a letdown. There's a letdown of there's a decrease of motivation that happens afterwards. It's like, oh, I've spent the money, I've paid, I've enrolled, I've signed up, and now somehow this not as motivated now to like do something with it. Or maybe we should say the doing something with it is riskier. There's more possibility of failure involved. Whereas the
Right.
buying process is easy. It's like, oh, it's so exciting. Oh my God, this looks so great. The fantasy has been created in our minds for what's possible if we, you know, join this program. It's like, and now I'm going to make all this money, or I'm going to create all these results in my life. That's the buying process is so exciting. But then the actual after you buy, now the rubber hits the road, you have to like watch the things, read the things, study the things, and then try it out in your own life, which could work, could not work. It's much scarier now. And so the student, that's why it's so easy for them to go, well, let me chase another buying process.
Mhm.
This is really dangerous.
Yeah.
And really, a lot of myself included, I have all these on my shelf. I
Yeah.
spent tens of thousands because I've been through that process. So there's that dynamic. And then my dynamic from the seller side was I was starting to feel guilty about taking all this money from people and go, well, wait, you barely went through module one, or you went through modules two and three, and then you stopped. I had 12 modules for you. And why did you stop? It was too hard. You went Sometimes I'm like, hello, are you still there? Like I'm emailing them, they've moved on to the next product.
Right.
I'm
You
going
know,
to stop here because
yeah,
there's a lot
there's
here.
so much to unpack it just in what you just shared, right? So there's
Yeah.
the integrity piece, feeling like you're not really actually getting them to the results
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
just they have this shiny object syndrome and moving on to the next thing. And it what I heard out of what you shared also is this empowering the client piece that has
Yes.
unfortunately over the last decade been erased. Like we only well, we started to use these manipulative techniques to get the buyer to buy, but they were still buying in this kind of frenzy and kind of
Mhm.
scarcity mentality that they were too frozen to actually get anything done or
Right.
implement anything that you had sold them. And
Right.
so that led you away from charging these higher amounts.
Yes.
So what I want to get into also is this relationship between, because what you talked about in this article is that you were being told that there's a relationship between the client's progress and the higher amount. So these high ticket pricing
Yes.
price coaches, they're
Yes.
telling us basically you have to charge a lot of money
Right.
so that your clients actually do the work that we want them to do.
Yes.
And so what yeah, I'll let you comment.
Well, there are two types of people. Now, whenever I say that, it's always funny because you can segment personality types and humanity into as many ways as you want to. But I'll just, for fun right now, I'll just say there are two types of people, right? One type of person is in they love the buying experience. They love signing up for things. And then they're not really ready to apply it. And when I say two types of people, I mean that those two types are within ourselves too,
Okay.
for various things. I mean, I also sometimes buy products or services because it's exciting to buy, and then I realize, oh, I'm not really ready to use it. Or I'm not dedicated enough to that process to really engage with it, right? So I myself have both parts in myself, but that's the one part is like, oh my gosh, buy, and then okay, I'm not really ready to do the challenging work or the long term work, you might say, of gradually making changes, that create a different life. So that's one type or one part, and then the second type of person or second part is a person who is more considerate about buying something. And once they buy it, they might even, before they buy it, they might even go, hey, how long are the calls? And let me make sure I have them on my calendar. And how long does it take to do the homework? And then once they buy it very considerately, and then once they buy it, they've already maybe even calendared in, or they've set up their structures to actually use the product or service or program, and they're going to come to the Q&A calls. They're going to ask questions. They're going to apply things, and then they're going to report back, and they're going to see the changes in their life. Like I said, we have both parts within ourselves, depending on what we're buying and what stage of life we're in right now, right? And both types of people, or both parts, are within every single socioeconomic stratus. Within every single price point, there are both types of people. I realized that
Mhm.
because Sarah, with the $2,000 people who are spending $2,000 with me, just like that, left and right. I mean, I literally have been, I remember, the height of my high ticket days, 2012 or something. I was on a webinar selling on a webinar, my own product. And I got 35 people on that webinar to buy my $2,000 course. So it was a $70,000 webinar for me. I made $70,000 in an hour,
Mm.
and 35 people bought it. And I'm like, and then later on is that, that all 35, of course, among the 35, there were some people who loved the buying experience, not
Mhm.
so much the application. And then some people a few people who thoughtfully applied everything.
Right.
But I was feeling guilty, obviously, of those who didn't apply things and just moved on to another product. So, Sarah. So basically, there's that. So there doesn't matter if you charge $10,000 or okay, maybe $100,000. Well, even $100,000. I mean, I've heard of coaching programs that charge $100K,
Yeah,
right?
they're out there.
And you might say, well, gosh, 100,000. I mean, you must be like maybe hopefully consider it for months or for, you should ask everybody, should I spend this money? No, some people make millions a year,
Yeah.
right? Or some people have millions and they're like $100,000, great. Maybe right? It's like
Right.
every single price point, there are people for whom that's not a big deal.
Mm.
You see what I mean? And what was sad for me was the people who spent the 2,000 with me for whom it was a big deal. And yet, even some of those people love the buying experience and are not ready or not willing to do the work. So like I said, every single price point, there are these two types of people. And the other examples there, my books at this time of this recording, my books are $5 on Kindle. All my books. Actually, my spiritual book is $1 on Kindle. It doesn't matter. My business books are all $5 on Kindle. And I have some $5 book readers who email me and say, George, in chapter 17, you talk about this. Like, hey, George, I read your book cover to cover. I've read all your books and I've been applying it. And then they comment on my videos. And there are people of these two types, every single price point.
Right.
People who buy my books who like study it, like, on their nightstand. I mean, people tell me, George, I have your books on my nightstand. And I read a bit every morning or every night. And then I think about it. I'm like, this is wonderful. Thank you. And yet
So
I
what
have
you're
people who
saying basically,
yeah.
George, is that it doesn't matter really whether
It's these two
a
types of people.
$50,000 investment
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
$5
Like I
investment.
said, I have literally been to a conference where this, I went to the it was a Brendan Burchard conference, I remember. And at the end of the conference, he sold his $10,000 thing, right? $10,000 mastermind or whatever, mastermind, several hundred people in the mastermind, so-called. And I met a buddy there and we struck up, became really good friends. I thought we would be lifelong friends and we were so excited. We were sharing. And then he said, yeah, I'm signing up. And he signed up for it. I didn't because I was like 10,000. It's not really my price point. He signed up and I followed up with him. I was like, how did it go? Whatever. And from what I could tell, he moved on to another program.
Mm.
So 10,000 for him was just like, oh yeah, and then 10,000. So that's so interesting that there are people. Yes, typically, I think, if we look at some kind of curve, there are these two types of people. Yes, the higher the price you go, the more considerate people who are considerately buying that thing than people who are buying it impulse and just moving on.
Mm.
Sure, there's more of them, but still there are lots of people who buy on impulse or without the structure to apply.
Yeah. Well, given that this is the Humane Marketing Podcast,
Yes.
I mean, 10 years ago, maybe you and I would have told everybody, well, just, try it out. To put up a $50,000 program and you'll get those people who buy on impulse and
Yes.
who cares,
Yes.
as long as you make your $500K per year and you're going to be
Oh, yeah,
happy.
exactly.
Well, that's not the conversation that we're having here. And I know that I heard that from you. It's like, well, my integrity told me to change direction and do something different. And so you lowered your prices, like you said. And so that's where you're at now, right? You still have the group programs, but at a lower price point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm just right now, as of this recording, in my annual phase of launching my group program. Now it's 2 group programs for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is essentially, $2,400 for the year and one is $1,200 for the year. And $2,400 is my high ticket now,
Mm-hmm.
where they get 3 Q&A calls with me a week. It's like there's only 25 members allowed in that. It's like my highest premium is not 50,000. It's not 10,000. And after all these years, it started in 2009. After all these years, my highest ticket is 2,400 a year. And they get like the most attention from me. I get to know them the best and all that stuff. And guess what? It's enough money for me.
Mm.
Even
come
though I
to
live
that
in San Francisco.
enoughness. Yeah. Yeah. You live in an expensive place.
I live in one of the
right?
most
Yeah.
expensive cities in the world. And yet I have set up my lifestyle and I've set up my price points and my business model such that, well, of course, you have to think about how many I sell. And from 2009 to now, my audience is obviously bigger than it used to be. And I'm able to fill enough spots in my programs where I'm like, that's enough. And the question, Sarah, that I think everybody needs to continually ask is, what is success? And why everybody we learn, not everybody, not you and me, right? Certainly, but a lot of the marketing people we learn from, it's like always more money, always more money. I have a hobby of following the Facebook ads of people in my industry.
Mm.
And every time I look at the ads, I'm like, you're always selling more money, or you're selling, oh, just copy paste these emails or copy paste this webinar funnel I have. And then suddenly you have all these clients. I'm like, you know, right. I've been there. I've been all over. I've been around all this, and it's always these people like selling. I make 54 million a year. I'm like, really? Like, and
Yeah.
it's the question again is success means you have to make more money every single year,
Yeah.
or is there a different metric of success that is more sustainable in every way and more personally meaningful? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly what we're talking about in humane marketing. That's
Yeah.
where it all starts. It's with your
Yes.
definition of success. And not just because of personal wealth, but also humane marketing really tackles, our planetary health and wealth and enoughness. And
Yeah.
if we all are still in this individualism where we are actually making 54 million per year, what does that
Yeah.
mean for the rest of the world, right? And what does that mean with climate change? Because as far as I know, it's not those kind of people who are then, using that money for good and investing back. No, they're still, getting more jets and more cars and more
Right.
and more and more.
Yeah.
They're
I
still in
mean,
that old business model. That was you and I grew up in that business model, but it's time to
yeah.
change. And
Yeah.
I want you to tell us more about this, because you say in that article, I recommend charging your fees based on enoughness. And you just explained a little bit of what that means for you.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
also really want to highlight that this is different for everyone, because clearly
Sure.
our
Of course.
listeners are not where you are at now.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have a huge audience. They're just
Yeah.
starting out.
Sure.
And
Of
so I
course.
sometimes have a problem with, people like us who have our kind of experience
Right.
saying, you shouldn't do this, or high prices are not good. And there's kind of this trend of going
Yeah.
lower and lower.
Yeah.
But then people who don't think about this enoughness, well, they
Right.
don't have enough if they're
Sure. Of
charging
people
these
who
low
are working on
prices.
that part. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell
Well,
us more about that
yeah,
enoughness.
absolutely. I totally hear you. So whether we should charge higher or lower fees depends on, well, like I said, I think, okay, so enoughness aside, it depends on how many we can confidently enroll, right? So, okay, it depends on how much are we expecting and requiring of our business to support our lifestyle.
That's where it starts. Yeah. How much do we need? Right. Yes.
How much do we need specifically from our business? Because
Right.
we
Yeah.
might, our grocery bill, our rent, our mortgage, some of that money might come from other income sources or other
Mhm.
wealth sources or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
some of us are lucky to have some family support. I don't have any, but some people have family support. Some people have savings. Some people have a part-time job. Some people have other sources of money.
Right.
And so the question is, how much are you requiring from your business? Because the more you require from your business, then the more stress you have. Let's think about this.
Yeah.
The more stress your business has, right? It's like, I must, like, who says you have to make $10,000 from your business? Well, maybe you, but who says, why do you say you have to make, if talking, it's like, where did that come from? Like, like, because the more money you require of your business, the more stressful your business is, the more marketing you have to do, the more people you have to recruit, the higher price, like it's all true.
Yeah.
And so that's really the first question I have. But But let's say, okay, well, George, okay, if I don't have a part-time income, I don't have family support, I don't have savings, I have to make all my mortgage and rent and grocery bill and insurance or whatever you're paying for from my business. And the question, of course, is that true? Like, might it be a better and less stressful idea to get a part-time job? I don't know, or to ask for some family support if that's reasonable, whatever. Okay, now that you've gotten some number that you require of your business, thoughtfully so, all right, fine. Then my question is, how did you even, is that realistic for you to require that from your business? Or did you just come up, your business coach or someone said, you should be able to make 5,000 from your business? Well, is that, because I always ask people, when people give me a number to say, George, I'm going to make $10,000 or $100,000 this launch. Okay, help me do that. I'm like, I can help you. But my first question for you is, how did you come up with that number of making X dollars for this launch? Because
And usually it's mainstream success definitions, 6-figure, 7-figure business.
yeah,
crap.
whatever. Because the thing is, I also have targets for my launches, but my targets, my numbers are very reasonably based on, guess what? Pattern recognition, past history of my launches. It's like, George, if someone comes to George, you got to make me make a 50,000 launch this time. I'm like, let me ask you, what was your last launch of this product for this size of an audience?
Right.
Oh, my last launch, I never launched this product. I don't have an audience. I've never launched before. And now you're going to say you're going to fit. I'm like, how did you come up with that? Because the first time we could make 50,000 in this launch, we could, it's a possibility, or we could make $500 this launch. The first launch is the start of the pattern. It's the start of the history of your numbers, so that we can then go, well, last launch you made 10,000. Great, wonderful. This launch, let's aim for, what do you want to aim for? 15,000? You want to aim for 12,000? Do you want to aim for 20,000? Okay, well, that means something has changed dramatically. If you're going to go from 10,000 last launch to 20,000 this launch, something must have changed dramatically. Did your audience grow double? Are you using a different strategy? Any strategy that's different that you're using is always test. It's always an experiment. Are you going to change strategies on me? Okay, if you use the same strategy, same size audience, you made 10,000 last time. If they're not fatigued by that launch yet, if you think a lot of people haven't bought yet, then we might make 10,000 because if everything kept the same, right? So in other words, the reason why I'm saying all this is because it reflects, it therefore says what our pricing should be. Because my question is, how many are you going to enroll this time? When I say launch, I don't mean for the person who says, George, I don't have a product. I just have a one-to-one service that's just ongoing. So when they say launch, I don't understand what you mean. Here's what I mean. A launch, in my definition, is simply a concerted effort to let your audience know about your service. That's it. So what I tell people is, I'd say gentle launches, which I think you'll really resonate with too. And you can borrow that if you want, but I say gentle launches, which basically means 2 emails. That's it. 2 emails to our list. If we have a list, if we don't have a list, don't worry. 2 posts on social media, wherever you have some Facebook, you have 3 Facebook friends. Fine. That's you're launching to 3 people, right? You have LinkedIn's, you have 30 LinkedIn connections. Fine. You post on LinkedIn, you're launching, quote unquote, to 30 people. That's what a launch is simply posting twice.
Right.
Is what I call gentle. Anyway, so my question is, how many, so I always tell my audience, please do a gentle launch every month if you can. If not, every 2 months at least. So my question is, okay, every time you do a gentle launch of 2 emails or 2 posts or both, how many do you expect to enroll? George, I don't know, because I've never enrolled anyone. Okay, fine. We're going to keep going until you enroll, until your gentle launch enrolls people. We'll have to tweak, your launch materials, your launch messaging, your offer, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but when we'll keep launching until you say, oh my gosh, this launch netted me 10 clients. Wonderful. Wonderful. Good. So then next launch.
I want to interrupt you because I want to bring in the pricing conversation in this piece.
Yes.
So if this is a new client who's never had anyone enroll or even just had a one-on-one client,
Yeah.
What's your conversation there then? Do you kind of advise to
Okay.
go a bit higher prices
So,
because they
okay. The
somehow need
reason,
to sustain their
yeah.
living?
Yeah.
Or do you say, well, you don't have that much experience. Let us start with a lower price, just like I
Yeah.
do. But then
Yeah.
it's not really equal because you have volume
Yeah.
and they don't. So
Yeah.
you see
Okay.
where I'm going with this?
So the reason why I said all these numbers about the launches is because I believe we should set our price based on how many we can confidently enroll,
Mhm.
right? Because if I can confidently enroll 100 people, my price doesn't have to be as high of whatever I'm requiring of my business. It's all kind of cascading down to this moment.
Right.
So if you say, George, I have no idea how many I can enroll, I'm just starting. So what should I charge? Here's my advice on that. You charge you charge the number that is the perfect balance, which of course we're always finding that perfect balance. You charge the numbers that is the right balance between what you feel so confident you can deliver a great experience, if not results, at least a good experience, right? If not results. You confident that number that you're charging is like, I'm feeling really good about this. And I feel like, guess what? I feel like they're getting a good deal.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I don't feel resentful. That's where the
I
balance is.
feel
I
good
don't feel
about
resentful
charging this
at this
money.
number.
Hmm.
And I also, they, not only do I feel they're getting a good deal, they tell me it's a good deal.
Hmm.
See, that's the thing. Because Sarah, you know, someone could come to you and go, Sarah, I think you're an amazing deal at $1,000 an hour. If I could spend an hour with you, $1,000, easy. Sign me up. And if you feel, yeah, I'm giving people a really good value, great experience. I mean, my time is so valuable, $1,000 an hour, no problem. Then I said, please charge $1,000 an hour because you got that balance between maybe you would say, George, I would feel resentful if I charge 500 an hour because my time is worth more than that. I feel my time is worth more because I could be doing many other things. And I would start to feel resentful at 500 or 750 or 900 an hour, and 1,000 makes me feel like, okay, that feels good. That feels right. Good. Then again, there's that balance between your feelings and the market's feelings. And if your audience, your market goes, great, $1,000, great, easy, sign up. Then I would say 1,000. But then a lot of people might go, wow, $1,000, I don't know. I would feel badly if I charge someone 1,000 because what can I give them in an hour that's worth 1,000? In my heart, in my experience, my ground, then I said, fine. Then we have to keep going down until we get to a number where you're like, oh yeah, 150 an hour. I feel like I could really deliver great value and the market agrees with me. There's the number.
It's so complex, isn't it? There's so much to it. There's our own integrity. There's the fact whether we're
That's
just
why
starting out or
there's no
not.
formula. The
There is no
formula is not,
formula. There really
is
isn't.
there like, you're a starting coach, therefore it's 75. Who says that? I mean, maybe the formula is such that there's a market message out there, right? There's market rates. And maybe of course, how we feel is right for us to charge is influenced by the market rates. We see the people around us charging this amount, that amount. Of course, that influences us. And the amounts we've paid also, right? Like, my wife, she pays quite a lot for her coach. And at first, I was a little resentful of that. Obviously, we share money.
We won't
And
tell
so
her.
I'm like, oh, you're paying that much for your coach? I'm like, oh, maybe you should try some. But then over the years, I realized that the fact that she's paying it, it up-leveled her sense of the money as well. Because she's like, well, I'm paying, 200 an hour here. So maybe charging 175 an hour for me is just fine, because you see what I mean? So it's like, but it's everything. It's the market. It's what we see people charging is what we pay ourselves. And that informs sort of our own intuition about things. And then we go out there and we charge that money and we see what people say to us. And that whole thing has to do with how we build our credibility and all that as well. Right?
Yeah, and then there's the complexity of, do we offer this time one-on-one or is it in a
As a
group
group.
setting? It's a
Yeah.
huge difference.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
another thing you mentioned in that article is, you found that higher fees decrease client inquiries. So if you start
Yeah.
charging $1,000 for a one-on-one session,
Go ahead
yeah,
and give it a try.
you're gonna have a difficult or a more difficult time to find clients at that price. But I
reason
would
why,
argue it
yeah,
depends whether you maybe don't want all these clients. Like,
sure,
I
sure,
give you
of
my
course.
example. I clearly say I only work with 3 one-on-one clients at a
Yes,
time.
there we
And
go.
I want
Right?
it that way. It's
Yes,
deliberate. That's how my
yes,
energy works. I cannot
beautiful.
work with more people
And you
one-on-one.
probably
Then I
shouldn't be
have the group
charging
program, but
150 an
one-on-one,
hour or something. Yeah,
yeah. And so
yeah,
that's it's not 1,000 per hour, that's for sure, but it's a higher investment.
yeah,
It
yeah.
is deliberately so, and doesn't come from that argument, yeah, you need to charge more so people actually do the work. That's not how I reflected and came up with that number.
Right.
But it's more about, well, if I lower my prices, then I need to hustle more because then I
That's
have
right.
all these clients and
Yes,
oh my God, and
yes,
then I don't feel good and I don't
that's
have
right.
time to focus
Yes,
on my community, which is a very low investment.
yes, yes, yes.
That takes me actually just as much time as the one-on-one clients,
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
but I enjoy spending my time
yes.
there, right? And so it's
You set up your
also
business model.
about
Yeah,
your own what you want, not
yeah,
just what your
yeah.
clients want, what do you want as well? Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I mean, back to the example of my wife, who is a therapist, like she used to see 18 to 20 client hours per week.
Yeah.
And there are therapists who see even higher. Like I've heard of therapists who see 22 to 25. I mean, that's a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like emotional labor, a lot of emotional labor, all that
It's
presence and all.
exhausting.
But anyway, it's like now, now she doesn't want to spend as much energy on that. And now she's like, and now the rate goes up. And so absolutely, it's like we need to set up, with experience, with the grounded experience of what we enjoy doing, where we feel like we're giving the best value, we need to set up our business model such that the business model has to do with our gifts, our talent, and our market and our pricing. And it's like we set that up in such a way that, okay, I have a group thing here, I have a one-to-one thing here. Maybe I sell online courses, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Maybe I sometimes do intensives or retreats. I offer that, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the mix because I feel like that's fair, right? There's different
Hmm.
options, and your
Yes.
clients, depending on where they're at, they choose what they can afford and what feels good for them as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this whole thing of like motivating, let's talk about a bit about that because
Hmm.
that's kind of where I first heard it. It's you charge more, could you get people who are more willing to apply, more willing to like I said, we started from that in the very beginning. But then the
Yeah.
question is, well, then if I'm not using the high price to motivate people, how do I motivate them?
Hmm.
Okay. And I say there's basically two ways. One way is, well, you've got to learn how to structure your program more effectively, whether your one-on-one program or your group program. You have some accountability structures in there. You have sort of like easy onboarding, stepping in so that they start to feel momentum. I mean, these are all program design questions that the more experience you get at that, the more you go, okay, this is how I really I don't overwhelm people in the beginning or whatever, like get them going and get them seeing that it's possible. Oh my gosh, there's something possible here. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to invest more of my energy because sure, you got them to invest the money, but it's a whole other skill
Doesn't
set to get
stop
them to
there.
invest their
Yeah.
energy. Right. So because that's more important even for their own transformation. So that's one side of it is like program design. And then the other side of it is you might say credibility because the more like I'll give an example, right? Most people here have heard of Brene Brown
Hmm.
or let's say Tony Robbins.
I prefer Brene Brown, but it doesn't
pick your
matter.
influencer that you really respect, right?
Mhm.
If you got into a program with Brene Brown that you were able to easily afford, hopefully it doesn't, cost you a second mortgage, but you got into a program with Brene Brown, you could afford it, and you get personal time with her in some way, or I mean, we would all work our butts off probably, right?
Mm.
Like we
Yeah.
want to show up because
Right.
she has so much credibility with so many of us.
Mhm.
Again, pick your influencer, pick your thought leader that you really, really respect, right? It doesn't have to be someone famous. Someone who is listening to this podcast might go, my gosh, if I could be one of Sarah's 3 clients, knowing that she only picks 3 people to work with at a time, I'm gonna work my butt off. I'm gonna show up. I don't have to hustle but I'm gonna really dedicate myself, structure, right? That's the credibility piece,
Right. Yeah.
right? Like that is what marketing at its best is about, is showing up with such trustworthiness that credibility is created, well-deserved credibility is created. And when there's such kind of credibility, and then even if you're not so good at program design on the aspect of it's this balance. It's like the more credibility you have with them, the more likely they're going to do stuff as when they buy. And then of course, the better the program design, the easier it is for them to do it. So that's how I think we should be motivating. Aside from the price point, which is a separate discussion, the motivating part really should happen in that way. So
I love that you brought that in, and it kind of, brings us full circle also to humane marketing or authentic marketing, like you call it, because we're really, motivating the client already before she buys
yes,
the program, right?
yes,
And that
yes,
also means empowering them.
that's right.
I
Yeah,
really find that it's time to give our clients the power back,
yeah,
lead
yeah,
them, invite them to make a decision, a buying decision, but not push them down some kind of funnel and
right.
buy just so we can make a profit. So it's that empowering piece that we need to really
That's great.
practice with humane marketing
I
as
love
well.
that.
Mm.
Yes, empowerment is right, because the traditional conventional marketers are essentially trying to control us
Yeah,
as much as possible.
disempowerment. That's true.
Right? Because think about it, like all the stuff they teach, right? Like again, me surfing the Facebook ads and seeing the people on my industry and goes, you just have to, copy paste this or do this and set up this system, and then you'll get people salivating to buy from you. And then I literally saw, Sarah, I literally saw a video ad just yesterday. So a client of mine sent this to me because he thought I'd find it amusing. I found it scary
Right.
because this video ad was saying, what is this? These are the emotional color wheel. And in my program, I'm going to teach you how to get your potential clients through having them experience fear, and then anger, and then greed, and then blah, 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 blah,
Mm,
all this stuff. So finally they'll buy from you because
mm, right.
I'm like, okay, in short, let me teach you how to manipulate people based
Mm,
on their emotion, the emotional vulnerability and their susceptibility to buying, because you've put them through these experiential states that you have designed, with an ulterior motive, right? And so, and that is persuasion psychology at its best,
mm, yeah.
Sarah, right? Like
At its worst, let's just say, because
right. At its
to make
worst.
things clear here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is what people learn, the conventional, and frankly, if I could say, this is a real term, right?
Yeah.
Psychopathic marketing.
Mm,
I don't mean to trigger people, but really, I mean, if you study psychology and understand what psychopathy is, psychopathic, personality types, narcissism, and all that stuff. It's people who don't have any qualms about bringing people through the emotional states so they can get what they want,
right.
essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's you and I, Sarah, are basically seeing that and go, oh my God. I'll say, I myself have learned from those things. I myself have done those things.
Same
It
here.
never sat right, which is why I stopped in 2012, 2013. I broke down, like I had this kind of spiritual breakdown. I'm like, I can't if this is going to be my career, I quit. I don't want it. Why? It's
Mm,
like, sure, the money's coming in, but it's like, it feels so bad every day. And
mm,
they're telling me this is success,
yeah.
and I'm like, if this is success, I basically gave it all up. And I ended up taking on this hero. Sarah, you might appreciate this person called Peace Pilgrim.
Mm,
I don't know if you've heard of Peace
never
Pilgrim,
heard
but
of him. Okay.
okay. Um, she died in, I think, 1983. And this person, amazing. I just tell you this 2-minute story. She grew up, had an early success in her life. I guess she was very smart and had early success in her career, and then found it very meaningless. And one day she went into the woods for a whole night just to contemplate about the meaning of life. And she came out of the woods that day and says, I'm not going to work for money anymore. And this is radical. This is a radical person. She's my hero. She's my hero in terms of values. I'm not like literally going to sell everything I own, but that's what she did. Okay. So this is one of the
Right.
classic stories, and she really made it work. She sold everything she owned and became a walking pilgrim. She walked from one end of America to the other end, something like 20 times in her lifetime, something like that.
Oh.
She did this. Some people like hear her story, and some, sort of like idealistic, 20 somethings try it out. And I heard the story of some idealistic 20 something trying it out and like going back home to mommy after 2 days and go, I can't do this. Let me get a job. Right. No, this is an extraordinary saint. I mean, she literally did this not for 2 days or 2 months, 30 years.
Wow.
And the only reason she stopped doing it, so the biggest irony, because she did this, she became famous walking throughout America. What did she do? She basically, she helped everyone that she saw. Everyone who needed help, she went and helped them. And she never asked for money, and she never asked for shelter or food. She never asked for anything. And only when people go, would you like to stay at my home tonight? Would you like to stay in my barn? Or would you like a meal? Otherwise, she was sleeping on the highway. She took blueberries from the road. She never asked for anything. She only received, and she helped everybody. For 30 years, she just walked like this. And then finally, she got so famous, she was giving talks now, right? People invited her. She never took a single penny for her talks. People just invited her. They wanted her inspiration. So in one of these talks, someone said, insist her to give her a ride. They had a car accident and she died in a car accident. Isn't that interesting? Like so anyway, so
Yeah.
long story short, I had this spiritual, I learned about her story. I learned about other things. I had a spiritual breakthrough in 2012, 2013, 2014. And those years, like I just was wrestling and struggling with what the meaning of life was and what my career should be. And in 2014, I reemerged and I said, I'm going to stop doing those high ticket things. I mean, whatever I was doing, I knew it didn't feel right. I don't know what the right part is. I was still trying to figure out humane marketing. Didn't know any of this stuff. And so I started experimenting, like doing one-to-one, like at the lowest price I could possibly charge. Again, finding that balance. This would feel resentful. This would just be outside the resentment point. Back then, I think I was charging like 125 an hour, as many clients as who wanted to sign up, and then so just kind of like gradually increase, and then started a group program charging, I don't know what it was. I think charging $50 an hour for a group, $50 a month for a group program back then. And like gradually raising it, just gradually. So as like I said, that balance between, this would feel resentful, and this would not, that I just kept going up from
Finding
there,
that zone. Yeah.
finding it.
Yeah.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. And then to today, like, okay, yeah, this number feels right. This number feels right. And then the market seems to be responding. I have also, Sarah, I've also sometimes raised my rates too quickly,
Mhm. Yeah.
whether it's
It
online course or
But it
whether, and
just
then,
shows that it's such an experiment, and
yes,
and also what I appreciate from your story is that it takes time to
yes,
really grow into the price that is
that's
right, and
yeah,
kind of giving yourself permission to try it out slowly, and
yeah,
I think most importantly, not listen to necessarily what everybody else is telling you out there, but
yeah,
listen to, yeah, your gut, and just make sure also, I just want to say that again, that you have enough for yourself, because you can't be a humane marketer if you're not also caring for yourself.
that's right.
You want to care for your clients and the
Yeah,
plan, but you
yeah.
also need to care for yourself. And
What's interesting is that enoughness, I had such a radical experience of listening to, and I recommend this to everybody, Peace Pilgrim audiobook. You just Google it. It's
Mhm.
free, of course. It's free on SoundCloud at this time. And it's been free for all these years, 10 years, and it's still free. So I hope, I expect to keep it for free. but the voice, it was actually not Peace Pilgrim's voice who recorded. It was like a voice of a friend of hers. But that voice, along with Peace Pilgrim's words, is like the perfect combination and like settled me so much. And it gave me this feeling, Sarah, like, okay, no matter what, Sarah, if Peace Pilgrim could have done it at that enoughness level, literally, like never asking a single dime and like just waiting until food and shelter came to her, like, okay, that's like, if there's someone was able to live like that, like, okay, if I ever have to go homeless, right, I'll just be a Peace Pilgrim. Obviously, that's not, realistic for the vast majority of us.
It isn't, but it is almost like you have to come down to that level, and that's why I always say
Yeah.
when I talk about gentle sales and this
Yes.
serene garden
Yes.
and all of that, I say you are enough, even if you never ever make a sale anymore. And I think that is so
That's
important
right.
for people to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
And it's not something you just say. You really, it's almost like you
Yeah.
have to somehow go through some kind of breakdown in order to
Right.
realize that.
Well, and actually, Sarah, I'll say this: all of us go through periods of low sales.
Right. Yeah.
Still to this day, of
Yeah. Of
course. I mean,
course.
even though thankfully I have been structuring my system so that my income is very, but it's like there are still certain launches that surprise me. I go,
Right.
huh, wow, that was not as high as I expected. I mean, we all have relative numbers. Low for
Right.
me, maybe, well, I only sold 50 courses that for that, right? But low for someone, maybe zero. I've
Right.
had zero myself in the past. So
Right.
we all have periods of low sales, and that period of low sales, instead of feeling easy to feel depressed or afraid, right? Or sad or feeling low self-worth or whatever. Instead of that, here's my invitation. The next time we experience the inevitable low sales moment, I hope we'll go, oh, this is that opportunity that Sarah and George were talking about to remember and remind and feel into the enoughness again of who we are right now in this moment.
Mm.
Because if Peace Pilgrim could do it, and she was the happiest person that people knew around her, everyone around her goes, I've never met a happier person in my life, and she has nothing,
Right. Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
So it's like, if we can sense into our current enoughness around us, like, thankfully, hopefully this month we can pay rent, or if not, let's move to a cheaper place, but if we sense to it enoughness, then everything from there is abundance,
Right. It really is.
gratitude. And the gratitude, Sarah, ironically, I think does shift whether you want to call it vibrational frequency, or whether you want to just say that the gratitude gives us a positive attitude, which keeps us going. It does bring, I think, better business over time,
Mm.
you know?
It really does. Yeah. Practice it every night.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Good.
This has been beautiful. Thank you so much for this deep conversation about pricing. Go figure, only two introverts can go deep on pricing.
Exactly.
So love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Please tell people where they can find you and find
Thankfully,
out about your
just
courses.
they could Google me. My name, George Kao, Georgekao. Just Google my name and you could go wherever, my website or social media or
Your
whatever pops up
books.
is
And
great.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wonderful.
thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to this. I knew we would have a great conversation, and yeah, thank you for being such a great host and, creator of this podcast. So thank you for that.
Loved it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care.
Thanks so much for watching and being part of a generation of marketers who cares for yourself, for your clients, and for the planet. We really are change makers before we are marketers. So go ahead, be the change you want to see in the world. And I hope to see you again next week. Take care.